Hey, this is Russ Anderson. In this tutorial, we're going to talk about tripod mode solves. Now here's a shot from a tripod. You recognize it has a basic pan motion here, and typically they might include some tilt or even some roll as well. And these shots provide some more challenges just because they don't have 3D information in them. Now this, it's easier to recognize just because it's on a tripod and very robotic sort of move. But these kind of shots also commonly arise in handheld shots where the cameraman is standing still and simply pointing the camera in different directions. So even though it's not physically on a tripod, it's the same type of nodal shot where the body of the camera isn't physically translating from one location to another. So even though it's on a handheld shot, it can still need to be treated as a tripod shot. So I'm going to start out with this just by doing a normal automatic solve on it, and you'll see a little what happens. It did the 2D tracking and now it's working on the 3D solve, and it's getting to have some more problems. You'll see a message warning not a crisp solution, using a safer algorithm, and that's because it's trying to get 3D information when there isn't really any present. So you see it's taking kind of a bit longer there to get it, and you get some sort of solve, and typically what you'll find if you look at these in detail is that some of the things that are farther away will appear to be closer to the camera than ones that are in the foreground, because there's really no depth information present. So what we really needed to do initially was to click this on tripod checkbox on the summary panel, or alternatively on the solver panel, select this tripod mode. And as you saw when I hit the tripod checkbox on the summary mode, on the summary panel, it changes this tripod mode automatically here. So now if I go and resolve the scene, it very quickly zips through to get a solution. And one thing you'll notice here is that our RMS error is now over a single pixel, whereas before it was about a half a pixel. And so it seems like something's gone wrong. We've now got a higher error, but that actually shouldn't be a surprise, because basically before we were looking for information that wasn't there, and basically any kind of crap would be able to produce a low error. So now that we've switched to the tripod mode, it has to be looking for data that's much more consistent. So the error is a bit higher, but in this case it's actually useful information instead. So at this point, let's also go and we're going to do a clean up trackers. See, there's one of the trackers up close that's blowing in the wind a little. So we'll just let it delete that. And now when we go to resolve, we can switch to the refine tripod mode. And because this is a tripod shot, we need to stay in the refine tripod mode and not in just the plain refine mode. So we'll just update the solve a little based on that. So that brought down the error just a little bit. So now we have our initial solve. You'll notice that all the trackers are sitting out here basically on the surface of a sphere. They're all located at this world-sized distance away from the position of the camera. So in tripod mode, all of the trackers are quote-unquote far trackers, and that far tracker terminology is something you see just in a regular solve for trackers that are out far away on the horizon. But here when you have a tripod shot, you have these far trackers for everything, even though when they're completely nearby, just because they are only directions and not true distances. So everything's sitting out on that surface of a sphere. So now let's go and take a look at adding something into this. And we'll go and maybe create a cone and just plunk it out there somewhere. So I've just created something at random, and I can scrub back and forth, and gee, it sticks in the scene. Well, that's certainly handy. Let's go and, and you'll notice I didn't use anything as a reference at all to place it. Here I just move it out there. Now it's a little further away, but smaller. Maybe I really want it in the distance back there. So I can just go over to this other view and raise it up. And now it looks like it's out in that field, but now it looks like it's bigger. So the key point is that basically when you have a tripod solve and a tripod shot, you can just dump things in here and none of the distances matter. It's really only the apparent size and apparent positioning of the object that matters. So that makes it very easy to add things into the scene here for this isolated object. Now it gets to be a little bit trickier when you want to go and add in a couple different things. So now if I go and I'll do my cone again maybe. And let's just take it. We'll put it out there somewhere. You can see I'm using this top-down view, and I'll put it out there. And when you look in the camera view here, you'll see that the one that I just added looks like it's closer than the first one, even though in reality, in the 3D environment, it's much further away. So the tripod shots are easy to add isolated objects into. Everything you put in basically is going to stick right off the bat. But they're more complicated when you go and want to put an entire 3D environment in, because you don't have all these tracker locations with depths to use as references to put your objects in to get them in the right spots. So it's a good news, bad news sort of thing. And one of the things also that you'll see here is I just use the default camera position for doing this, which is what happens when you do a tripod solve. If I had additional information about where the camera was relative to an overall origin, I could have pre-positioned that to what I wanted. There are also some additional techniques inside of SynthEyes that you can use to help position this camera better for handling these larger, more complicated cases. And one of those is the single frame alignment technique, which would use parallel lines to be able to figure out where the camera is relative to those parallel lines. And that's a valuable technique for typically man-made scenes where you have, boxes and buildings and things that have a lot of parallel lines. Here we've got an outdoor shot that doesn't really have anything like that to take advantage of. So here you could go and eyeball things around if you had some particular objective to how you wanted things to be positioned. Or alternatively, if you have an existing model for this 3D environment, you could actually do this shot not as a tripod mode shot, but you could use the place mode in the perspective window to generate 3D locations off your model to be able to get a 3D solve for the position of the camera versus your existing model. And in that case, probably you'd filter out the camera position when you're done in a shot like this where you know that the camera isn't really moving. So you'd get a good average camera position that you could use. And it would be in the right position. But those are kind of additional topics. So this, though, shows that you can easily add things into this kind of tripod mode shot. It's important to know that you need to go and use the tripod mode to do it. And you can go and add things into it quite easily. Just watch out for what happens when you have a bunch of different objects that you want to insert. Thanks and regards.